Estamos aquí, donde todo hace sentido, en este lugar lleno de historia, de grandeza, nuestra casa, donde hace más de 7 siglos inició todo, nuestra gran Tenochtitlan. Este es nuestro sitio, donde honramos nuestro pasado, vivimos el presente y soñamos el futuro. Lugar donde habitan guerreros y guerreras que históricamente han luchado batallas juntos, solidariamente. Ayer, la historia presentó un reto sin precedentes que marcó nuestro camino, pero hoy nuevamente nos unimos para levantarnos como lo hemos hecho siempre. Porque la Ciudad de México está más viva que nunca y su corazón late intensamente, con toda su magia y esplendor. Una ciudad lista para recibir a nuestra gente y a nuestros invitados con toda seguridad, para crear en ellos experiencias y sensaciones únicas que nunca olvidarán. La Ciudad de México es un lugar con sentido y que consiente a quien la visita, porque puedes respirar una ciudad que tiene nuevos pulmones, con parques y áreas verdes recuperadas que hoy son admirados en el mundo, con espacios sorprendentes que han cobrado una nueva vida. Ciudad de México, un lugar donde se observa y se aprecia el arte, la cultura, cuna de tradiciones, lugar para mirar en la historia y para observar la modernidad y visionar el futuro. Estamos aquí donde el gusto por nuestra gastronomía no tiene límites, lugar de sabores, texturas, aromas y colores. Una ciudad hospitalaria, con tacto para atender a nuestros invitados como se merecen, con el mejor servicio, amabilidad y calidez. Una ciudad segura que gracias a un eficiente programa de vacunación prioriza la salud y la seguridad de todos. Estamos aquí donde el latir se escucha a través de los sonidos, el de nuestros habitantes, el de las calles, los parques y rincones, los espacios que marcan el pulso de una ciudad vibrante. Ciudad de México, una ciudad donde todo hace sentido, que se mueve, que no se detiene, movilidad de clase mundial que llega lejos y alcanza un nuevo destino. Sean bienvenidos a la ciudad que lo tiene todo y que hoy se reactiva con el impulso de su gente. Esta es la capital cultural de América, la capital de los derechos y la innovación, una ciudad que vibra, late y se siente, una ciudad segura. Visita la Ciudad de México. Gobierno de la Ciudad de México.
Interested in the means and strategies to facilitate dialogue and the last resource, the collective action of different stakeholders in different sectors and territories with the purpose of reinforcing social economy. Lane has experience in economy and political science. He is the co-president of TIES, it's an association that allows for the actual participation and transfers of social innovation in social economy, contributing to the development of the territory of Quebec. Just as the Office of Joint Economy, which is a patient capital for companies that are social economy companies. Welcome, Beatriz Alain. Thank you. I'm not acquainted with the protocol. What a pleasure to be here in Mexico for this wonderful edition and with these interesting presenters. It's such a privilege to moderate this session. So this is the link for the amount of activities that will be taking place. I'm sorry because of my Spanish. If they translate my French into Spanish, is going to be crazy. So the Dean of the Forum, which way the different sectors and stakeholders of social economy can co-create from a local arena solutions with global effects, since they can go ahead and send their answers with a hashtag stating GCEF 2021. I think we do have an introduction video introducing the panel that I'll be introducing to everyone. Are we
Hoy,
going to
el
see
mundo está
something?
más
So
interconectado que
today,
nunca.
the world is more interconnected than ever, bringing us great opportunities, but great challenges to move forward. We're going to have a collaboration, networks where the individual efforts can turn into collective actions, promoting social action, preserving the environmental, and all alliances have good things. Internalization of social and solidarity economy has an important element for the development of strategies, shared agendas that can share values, and articulated solutions that are going to go beyond the territory. Social and solidarity economy is a path that we take half in hand. That's why social companies, civil society movements, and collectives can work together, so we can work for a better world. But there's no economic transformation without social transformation. Everything starts with an action. We have to think about globally and act locally. So we are opening the fifth session, developing social international alliances. Wonderful. Very interesting. So working together and reinforcing our efforts. We have Yam Ken, who's the executive director of Solidarity Economy, and he is the Executive Director Association of Korean Local Governments for Social Economy and Solidarity. And we also have Marta Pedrajas, who's the coordinator for the Effect and Development Dicasterio for Comprehensive Human Development in the City of the Vatican. And we have Juan Manuel Martinez Mujin, who is the General Director of the Social Economy of Mexico. We have Antonella Noya, who's the head unit of Social Economy and Innovation in the Center for Entrepreneurship, SMEs, regions, and cities of the OECD. And then we have Paul Lott, I think, who is the director of the UNRISD. Welcome. So we're going to have 2 rounds of questions. So my first question is, how to promote? We're speaking about co-creating alliances that are which is a little bit more, requires more commitment. How do we promote alliances from the social economy and from a solidarity economy among all stakeholders that are not necessarily involved with this other way of doing economy? So in other words, so if we want to create a system, we have to pull others into our plans. And perhaps maybe you can answer regarding the challenges, the most pressing challenges for the creation of alliances in the international framework. So in order to answer, would you like to take the floor, Mr. Young Kim?
Thank you, Beatrice, and thank you, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon and good evening to all of you. Greetings from Seoul, South Korea. And as introduced, my name is Young Kim. I'm an executive director of SSCGOV, Association of Korean Local Government for Social and Solidarity Economy. And well, I'm very privileged to be a part of this session, and I'd like to give you thanks to everyone for having me here. Regarding the questions, I think the key is to make the SSC actors aware that reaching out to other sectors, including the traditional for-profit economy, will help the SSC sector survive and thrive. one clear observation in recent years around the world is that there has been strong convergence in the way of doing business by all different sorts of economic organization. For instance, for-profit enterprises have tried to follow what many SSC organizations have been doing over the century, becoming more concerned about the environment and building more democratic governance structures in their management, and caring more about their business's social responsibility. On the other hand, social enterprises, cooperatives, and other SSC enterprises now have the chance to adopt the business strategies of the for-profit private sector, thereby scaling up, securing sizable investments, and entering into the public procurement market. This convergence is being accelerated by emergence of ESG practices in the business world. Therefore, I think reaching out to other sectors is not a matter of choice, but an essential step in most SSC organizations realizing greater sustainability. Of course, it's not always easy to get organizations to understand the efficacy of networking, as overwhelmed as they are by the problems they face daily. That is where networks like the GCEP come in handy, I think, since they can provide a number of benefits to their members. From my experience as a part of the network of local governments, network organization, this kind of benefits to members is always crucial for many other people to get engaged in the activities of these networks. So the network is one of the pillars of mobilizations. Therefore, it should always be considered, I think, considered first, and when you are dealing with limited resources or capacity. As for the question about the most compelling challenges to create alliance in the international frame, I should say, as a native speaker of Korean, a minor language in the worldwide scheme of things, the language barrier is the biggest challenge to international cooperation for those who do not speak English, Spanish, or French. In fact, I'm sure many of my Korean countrymen and women who wanted to join the session cannot do so as long as they find themselves unable to understand the discussion, as this session is not being interpreted into Korean, as far as I know. So another compelling challenge to create international alliances in the SSC sector is a lack of information. For instance, at SSCGOV, my organization, we were very much open to international collaboration with networks like us, a network of SSC-oriented local governments in other countries in all the years. We did not know the presence of such networks until the GCEP introduced Frank's ALTES. ALTES is a network organization of local governments, SSC-oriented, and it has many members. And we were introduced by GCEP to ALTES in 2018. Thanks to such information from GCEP, we've been able to build a relationship with ALTES and sign an MOU for international bilateral cooperation. On top of these things, if I were to be allowed a little whining about a technicality, the time differences can be a challenge as well. Since many important activities, fora, and meetings occur either in Europe or on the American continent, East Asian countries like Korea struggle to meaningfully participate due to the at time extreme time differences. For instance, SSCGOV participated in the OECD Peer Learning Project partnership this year. We are privileged to be a part of that project. And many times the webinars on exchanges were scheduled very late in Korea, accommodating the time zones where most participants reside. While I had a great time, really great time learning from all of those webinars and meetings with my colleagues around the world, joining them almost once a week over a few months was not always easy. This session is no different, to be frank. It is almost midnight in Seoul. I'm not complaining about that. I'm really enjoying it. But I'm very much willing to be present at late night sessions like this, as far as I can learn from other experience of other experts and other friends. But many of my Korean colleagues and myself at times too find it quite difficult to stay up very late or wake up very early simply to study. So I think these are some kind of challenges to create international alliances given for a certain part of the world. Uh, Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Sí es cierto
Thank
que
you. It is true. Even though the social economy responds first to local and local needs, items such as language barriers or even time differences might not always be easy to tackle for the majority of stakeholders in social economy, in the social economy context. Secondly, I'd like to ask the same questions from Ms. Marta Pedrajas. You have the floor. Thank you, Beatriz, for the kind presentation. Thank you to the organizers of this global forum for the invitation to the Vatican, to the Holy See, to participate into this wonderful forum from El Dicasterio, which is a ministry of the Papal Dicasterio, which is the comprehensive human development ministry. We would like to reinforce the message of the Pope that it is in the cyclical Fratelli Tutti, we have the most anthropological bases that show the needs of those alliances. Obviously, we have observations in order to generate the economy, and like long ago, we had Francis economy, Francis the First, naming Francis of Assisi, not the Pope Francis, as a call for the youth economists 2 years ago, so they could go ahead and regenerate the economy, so they could propose items that would be more scientifically based and that come from the actual roots of the economy that will allow to regenerate those alliances. I wanted to bind this to the reflections what the Pope says in the cyclic Fratelli Tutti that states about how the world is doing, the status of the world, how difficult it is to work in common projects in terms of diagnosis and solution, how the church is proposing going around principles and values. Because of course the church has always been promoting, because the doctrine, it's not something that came about 5 years ago. Evidently, it's something we have had for a tradition when we speak about good well-being, solidarity, participation, human rights. So in Fratelli Tutti, we reflect on the challenges that we hear in the second question regarding the status of the world from a deeper point of view. How difficult it is to create alliances because we do need skills, maybe capacity building, because we are living in chapter number 1. The Pope does mention it, but you can go ahead and consult. It's the shades of a closed world, and he identifies different moments in which, as we were shaken up by the pandemic, we have certain insecurities. We thought that we were very solidary as a world, that we had capacity to coordinate, to work in common projects, but just a little virus has set us off. In other words, to put it in those terms, that lack of common projects and how those solutions can be brought about, particularly after the pandemic. So I'm not trying to focus just on the pandemic, but but I'm trying to talk about common projects that are built from common values. The Pope says open to the world is not only limited to the economy, but let's open to many other processes. It's building that economy from the origin of the economy that we need to restate, from the moral and philosophy and from the ethics, just as we saw at the beginning of the modern economy. But you need parting from philosophy.
So in that diagnostic, and also the world of discarded, and Paul explains it very well from the UN, we also have the motto of not leaving anybody behind, and the church is promoting much the world of the discarded, the world of indifference. So this has to be the main engine to rebuild those partnerships. Human rights, of course, they have to be universal, truly for everybody, to overcome fear and to integrate those that are found at the borders of countries, to relaunch communication, to face aggressiveness that we find in the social media, to recover knowledge and wisdom. In other words, the revision of the current world. We can see this in poverty, data inequality, the loss of so many human lives, and so on and so forth, but to reflect in a deeper manner, in a more anthropological manner. Why has this happened? What's missing to rebuild that solidarity, which are the values-based, which will allow us to truly build together. And we don't have to complicate things too much, because everybody, what we have in common, they're few but very important. Everybody will be in agreement on human dignity, human rights, the common well-being. I believe that we can find those common items which will allow us to rebuild these partnerships, but definitely they're more deeper than the management of capabilities or all these techniques. It's to go back to the principles and values that the pandemic has made us observe noticeably, which of course are built on what we've seen with a lack of projects, common projects that have been left behind. So this is it from me. During the second part, of course, I will propose a very specific partnership that I will present from the dicastery, from the Holy See, that are being promoted to rebuild that universal solidarity, that way of creating economy from the principles, of course, of Fratelli Tutti, but also with regards to the battles on how we can rebuild. So, you know, the planet as our common home, not only, or rather be able to keep in mind all the different agents involved in the reconstruction of the economy with the social pact and, of course, environmental. Thank you so much. Until later. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. This is very interesting regarding the importance for social economy, bringing and including people that might be excluded or discarded by the current system, but also to be able to pull resources from the dominant economy to increase the proportion of that economy that's working for us. And I truly enjoyed the common projects to generate common values, which reminds us that the mere process of the social economy enterprises makes us think of what we wish and how it can be done. And now, Juan Manuel, what would you say to those questions? Well, thank you, Beatriz, and thank you to all of you.
Es muy difícil responder esta pregunta
It's very
gigantesca.
difficult to answer this very large question in 6 minutes, but I'm going to try and do so. I see two dimensions with regards to the creation of these partnerships, from a political and a public, social, and economic. First of all, the political and first conceptual basis. A professor told me that the triumph of capitalism was mediated by the philosophical inspiration they had of a small book, which is called The Economic Growth Stages of a U.S. professor called Walt Wither Rustin of the 70s. Now, it talks about the fourth step of economic growth, precisely concerning this question. How can you mature the ideology of economic growth towards capitalism. And this has to do with the creation of commercial agreements that legislations
Lista
at
y se
local
genere
level
el
should
capital.
adapt the capitalistic world, not only capitalism as a promotion, but a culture and a public structure within countries. And this is what we have to do in social economy. It sounds very difficult, but Antonella is here from OECD, which allow us to clarify how these international agencies are searching for common codes from a legislative standpoint in the type of treatment in social economy, common codes and the types of measurements with ECLAC we're generating. For example, in Mexico at a local level, the satellite accounts has to be able to account for what you were saying, not only the values and practices, which are wonderful, but we have to express how much of our actions in social economy contribute to the codes that exist today. We can say if GDP serves a purpose or not, but we cannot say that we do not participate within it. In the GDP, we
El
have to
Producto Interno Bruto de la
visualize how
economía
GDP
real en
of
gran medida
real
tiene que ver con
economy largely has to do with popular solidarity practices and so forth. But we do not have the codes to be able to properly express, and the efforts carrying out with ECLAC at a local level are very important with satellite accounts. And at a continental level, it's also very important in the network. We had the GCEF session, the network of colleagues that in different countries in Latin America are generating mechanisms to promote these SSEs, that from a political and structural level. But you responded to the question. It has to do on how social companies have to be a redistribution focus. It means one, that they have to go to those markets that are taken up by the interests of intermediaries with a profit in their minds, which do not add much in the majority of cases. And those big businesses have to come towards what is social, because if we see large fortunes of
tienen que ver con
many of
negocios
them have
que
to do
salen
with
de
businesses that come and are funded from the pockets of the population at large, and on many occasions from the poorest. Telecommunications, for example, domestic appliances, they fund cent by cent, but they're hyper concentrated. Hence, those businesses also have to belong to the SSEs. So we have to create international networks. We have interesting projects. For example, you have to do with these platforms that are being utilized much for transportation, for the shipping. In other words, those platforms which are an intermediary, and that we, the locals, are using them, and the very precarious work or laborers are generating, large amounts of money. Those platforms also have to be part of the SSEs. Fortunately, at INAE, we're generating at least 3 initiatives for taxis, bicycle messengers, and the entrepreneurial co-ops, which make these jobs generate yields, and for these yields to remain in the hands of the people. And they're international through the generation of businesses, which are extremely strong. And what Marta was saying, I believe that a phenomenon which is part of the priorities of Pope Francis have to do with migration. And I believe that it's a very clear effect of this world that's head over heels. Capitals and merchandise can circulate with no difficulty whatsoever because of those commercial and political agreements that I alluded at the start. But the people that are crucial for the creation of wealth, the work cannot circulate freely throughout the planet. And maybe, as stated by President López Obrador, we would have to have economic structures for people merely to migrate when they wish to migrate, not to have forced migration because of economic issues based on this model. So, of course, it's a double dynamic, how to generate structures which will retain the labor force, but how to distinguish that all these migratory conflicts are because of the economic thought has to do with people do not move, but capitals do, and financing does. how evaluating and having a different moral codes alluded by Marta, where, for example, at the center you place the individuals, will make us reconfigure the mobility that needs to exist in the planet of people, of goods and capitals, but for the well-being of humans in a world where people and peoples are in command and not the world of things like it was presented by capitalism. Wonderful answers today. To clarify codes, we
De
use
nosotros
words
que logramos
that
a
allow
medir
us to recognize
ciertas
each
cosas
other.
para que sean
We are able to measure certain things to be able to be recognized, to concur towards existing businesses. We have to be there. We have to repossess our belongings in our economy. Competition. I said competence. I apologize. And to utilize models that are still promoting inequality at an international level with a proposal, which of course is risky at a local level, but also will allow these exchanges in a respectful and constructive and proper ones. I will now give the floor to Antonella Noya. She's here with us. Antonella.
Thank you very much.
Muchis.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. As usual, I'm very happy to be at the GCEF summit. I think it's a powerful, very powerful platform to share knowledge and to dialogue. So I would like to start by saying that your question, Beatrice, is very timely. And why so? Of course, it is always timely, I must say, but especially in a period in which all the world is trying to recover from the pandemic and to build back better, this kind of alliances in which social economy actors can interact and work with all the other economic actors are especially relevant. And why so? Because, of course, no one of the different economic actors, be this the public sector, the private business, the social economy itself, civil society, citizens, can address and solve the different challenges that the pandemic has worsened on its own. So really working together and sharing knowledge and bringing different perspectives is central to the way forward, the recovery. Why it is so important for social economy to be part of these alliances, and what they can, and in which way they can use also these alliances. I think that these alliances can help social economy to raise or social economy organization and social economy as a whole to raise its profile in the political agenda. We know that social economy is gaining visibility and recognition, and there is strong political momentum nowadays in which we can all tap in, but still there is a need to increase awareness of the added value of social economy to build inclusive and sustainable society. So this is the first reason why these alliances at local, national, and international level are needed. The second reason I think is that really the humanity face complex challenges, and it is just through mutual learning and collective intelligence that solution can possibly be found to address these challenges. So these alliances can really strengthen this collective intelligence and mutual learning. And another reason, which I think it is really important and can unleash further the transformational power of social economy, is that this alliance can be really platforms to inspire other actors, to get inspiration from other actors also on how to build more responsible behaviors, because this is what we need. The social economy relies on principles, but these, which are solidarity, cooperation, which are extremely important, but this principle would not be so important if they were not implemented in those practices that social economy can offer to other actors to get inspiration. And so Juan Manuel was mentioning the importance of international organizations to play their role in this. And indeed, I think that we, the OECD, the European Commission, the United Nations, the United Nations Task Force on Social and Solidarity Economy, which OECD is part of, have an important role. And this stems from their institutional mission. For the OECD, of course, we are a knowledge hub, and we facilitate the sharing of experience. And we have dedicated also spaces to allow this kind of exchanges. I would mention three. Of course, everyone knows the OECD Global Forum, which is a very important forum in which I see with pleasure that social economy and social innovation are more and more featured. And then in our directorate, which is the Center for Entrepreneurship, SMEs, Region and Cities, we have a local development forum which gathers practitioners from different areas. So again, these are opportunities to share concern, to align needs, and so on and so forth. And you can be aware of the fact that now OECD is currently working on this global action promoting social and solidarity ecosystem. And many of you are part of this action. We work with the support of the European Commission, which has a great role also in pushing forward the internationalization of social economy. We work with all European countries and non-European countries, and with some of the countries which are here. Mexico is one of the countries, and we thank you very much, Juan Manuel, for your active participation in this. Korea, and this is the same, and I hear the difficulty of the created by the time lag, and I apologize for this. And we work with India, so we are all together on this peer learning partnership exercise. And this is something I think that is very important, and because we have really created a platform, and we have been told that this was so important, in which people coming from different cultural, traditional, geographical landscape can discuss on specific topics: legal framework, social impact measurement, gender, youth, internationalization, COVID. And this is an excellent powerhouse to spread new ideas. So this is what can be done at international level, but I would also insist on the role that governments should have at national and local level to push further these alliances, and they should raise
Grazie.
awareness. Should I stop here?
Pues para tener tiempo para la segunda pregunta, te estoy
Ay,
recordando,
So
pero
as to have time for the next question.
ese está muy bien. Pues sí, nos recuerdas de nuevo la importancia de
Of course,
compartir
You're talking
conocimientos
about
para
the
saber que
importance of
existimos.
sharing knowledge, to know that we exist, to know what works, to duplicate or to import experiences, to be aware that not only actors, but governors need to be aware of the aggregated value of social economy. And you remind us that we are definitely present at an international level. And of course, this is a very important value for those governments that are trying to develop social economy, social and economic development. Paulette, please, if you could convey your impressions. Thank you.
Thank you, Beatrice, and thank you to GSEF and to all the other people who've worked so hard on the forum this week. I'm the director of a research institute in the UN. I just wanted to spend 1 minute just clarifying for people what we do. So we're an autonomous research institute in the UN that focuses on the social dimensions of contemporary development issues. And we have a number of research programs on climate justice, on gender justice, on transformative social policy. But one of our programs is called Alternative Economies for Transformation. And this in particular is where we do our research on social and solidarity economy. But we also do work on evolving the sustainability reporting of large corporates as well. We operate at really different ends of the spectrum to embed principles of solidarity, of inclusion, sustainability and fairness into how economic activity takes place. Now, within the UN system itself, UNRISD is very small. And in fact, I think if you think of the UN system as an economy, I tend to think that UNRISD is the SSE part of the UN system. We work very, very hard. We're very committed to build our research principles of the UN. And because we're small, we have to draw on and take part in alliances and networks with like-minded people, researchers, entities all around the world. And I think that's the main point about networks and alliances, particularly when many of the actors are small. It allows you to pool resources, to pool knowledge, to have more political voice and weight. And that in turn allows you to change hearts and minds about the potential of doing economic activity in a completely different way. In UNRISD, we use our position in the UN to talk with colleagues across the UN system. We were the initiator of something called the UN Task Force on SSE. And even now we work with economists at country level across the globe, telling them about some of the research and work that we've done on SSE that allows them then to talk with counterparts at country level about it. Public policy guidelines for local governments, mapping SSE impacts onto the different SDGs, statistics and the measurement of the SSE economy, all useful cornerstones for then allowing governments and others to help build up the sector. And I think for me, this is one of the most important points, is that the currency of networks is really knowledge, and knowledge codified in different ways. Stories about impacts, but also constraints to the growth of the sector and how they can be combated. And the useful sharing of that knowledge networks is really one of the most powerful things we can do. And as the other panelists have mentioned, it's such a strong opportunity now. We've had an economic model that's been dominant for the last 40 years, which has led us to the brink of multiple crises, inequalities in varying dimensions in our societies, environmental destruction and climate change, and most recently, of course, COVID-19, which has then just revealed, but also exacerbated these inequalities that exist. So it's a really, really good time to show what SSE has to offer and how things can be done in a different way. But I have 2 points about how we approach it as an ecosystem at the moment. Obviously, a very diverse and rich ecosystem operating at many different levels, but 2 things strike me. The first is I often find that we end up talking already to the converted, to like-minded people. I mean, it can be a very useful thing to do because that's how we share knowledge, but we're not then best utilizing the opportunity to change hearts and minds. Now, let me give just one example to make this very clear. Today is the start of the annual World Bank and IMF meetings in Washington. Today is the Civil Society Day, where, you know, typically lots of critiques around the bank and funds lending model are brought to the fore. But we should be there as well as a community, also advocating for how economies can be structured in different ways that elevate social and environmental objectives, and that this will be useful for all of the communities, including governments themselves and their populations. So we should be in these more difficult fora, talking to people who are less aware of SSE and the potential it has to offer. And the second thing I wanted to say is that young people, you know, who are in high school and universities today are super aware of these fractures and challenges that the world faces. And they feel, to be frank, quite shortchanged by the way that older generations have left the world in this mess. And I think that to grow SSE and its potential in the future, we need to be reaching out and creating networks in schools, in universities, showing what will be future entrepreneurs and business leaders that there is a different way to approach these things, and that there are contributions that they can make throughout their careers, which will actually go a long way to resolving some of these issues. So those are the 2 things I wanted to put on the table. Let's go beyond our comfort zone, go and talk to people who haven't heard of SSE, but who might benefit from knowing about it. And let's also bring and focus our networks much, much more on young people and youth.
Muchas gracias.
Thank
sí,
you very much. Yes, it's very interesting. We're small. Even the United Nations is small, but of course we need a network. Together we are large and strong. And you remind us of the value of research to study constraints, impact, and support, but also to be able to create awareness amongst youth and to prepare their future to see more people supporting these projects. Okay, let's go on to the second question, which is the following. What should be the actions or strategies of people, governments, groups, societies, countries to achieve a better and more inclusive world? Which are the key issues that need to be promoted at local level? And I remind you, those following us online, that after this, we will go on to the Q&A session. So after these presentations, if you have any doubts or a question, prepare them. For the second round, let's follow the same order. Yam Kim, might you share your thoughts with us?
Sure, Beatrice. Well, honestly, this question looks like this question was given to most of the sessions, previous sessions as well, to speakers and the panelists. And so I had a chance to discuss about this question with at another session. But well, so to be brief, I think the capacity building is the foremost factor of any strategies to create a more inclusive world. In order to build up capacity among actors, we should work together, as we've been discussing about, with our competitors, not just our peers or partners, as Paul indicated. We have to reach out to convert people, get their hearts. So that's very important, I think. As a network organization of local governments, we SSC GOV has learned that our voice should be heard and goals should be reached only when we have enough political power. If you don't have power in the decision-making process in particular, you won't be able to have an impact on society and solve social problems. So that is why we emphasize this importance of networking and collaboration at various levels with a variety of partners. So we've been working closely with lawmakers in Korea for favorable to SSC, for instance. Some of our mayors from my organization have become lawmakers, championing the SSC agenda and expanding the scope of SSC into related social issues has been what we have really made a lot of efforts toward as well. For instance, when essential workers, term essential workers or key workers in some countries came into the spotlight due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we began a legislative initiative from local governments, which aims to create a better legal and policy framework to protect employment for essential workers and provide them with better treatment. And so in this kind of reaching out has been very important to us, and we found this always meaningful for developing a better social economic model for people. Cooperating with renowned international partners also helps us a lot, particularly in getting more people to engage in the sector. Through international networks like GCEP, we can also learn about the best practices around the world. Moreover, as Antonella just mentioned, support for the social and solidarity economy from authoritative international bodies like the OECD or UNLISD will be very helpful for SSC actors around the world to be more visible and have their voices heard. Policymakers and legislators will also enjoy greater justification for SSC-friendly laws and policy measures by doing through this kind of approach. In Korea, for example, well, there was kind of interesting story I'd like to share with you. Not all policymakers or lawmakers were very into this SSC, to be honest, in Korea. That's kind of, you know, natural. I mean, but whenever I, you know, talk about the SSC to them, not all of them are interested, but in many cases, in most cases, whenever I take, you know, tell them, hey, we are working on the OECD project, and they are very much interested in the social and solidarity economy, and also the EU and EC has planned to have a guidelines for their member states and so on, and they, you know, they think different. Their response is very much different. So I think this kind of support from the international networks or international bodies are very crucial, at least for the countries like Korea, to get more people engaged and more interested in the SSC. In fact, from the study tour to best practices of other cities, our member city governments came up with a number of important policy initiatives to serve their people. We've been to Quebec, Canada, and we've been to France, we've been to Spain, and we've been to Italy and other countries to learn about the best practice and to, you know, share their knowledge with us. So basically, to get their knowledge shared. So basically, this is, I think, one of the best outcomes from the international cooperation. Having said this, I'd like to strongly emphasize the expanding engagement for SSC, not just in the policy arena, but also in the political process. I keep telling you that mainly because the more lawmakers and policymakers that consider the SSC as a serious policy alternative towards a more inclusive society, the more people will benefit from the SSC ecosystem, I believe. That is why we've done an SSC manifesto campaign for almost every year since 2014. This effort has led to an increase in SSC-friendly policymakers and lawmakers in the Korean political landscape, regardless of what party they belong to. Expanding engagement like this is not limited to politics. I should say, rather, the SSC sector needs to work hard to bring more members of the public into the sector so they can experience the efficacy of the social economy. So once we reach a sort of this kind of tipping point in terms of engagement of SSC-oriented people in Korea and in not any part of the world, we'll be able to effect more significant changes during these times of great transformation. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Muchas gracias por eso. Sí, nos recuerda la importancia de
Thank you for that. It does remind us of the importance of converting others, but mostly the government. It's not like social economy cannot exist without the government. But once we have the support and the acknowledgement and recognition of the government, there are more resources available, even equality. For private enterprises, and that reminds us of the value of a network such as SSE Gov and the importance of organizations such as OECD in order to give legitimacy to local practices. Martha, that's the same question to you. Thank you once again for the kind invitation to this second round. I currently would like to propose and present two main items that we're doing from the Holy See, promoted by the Pope. So it would be an example as well have to build those alliances from the local level, that to us it would be from the local church to the universal church. But these networks promoted by the Pope and the call it's universal. We can speak about local churches and Catholics, but the call it's universal. It's just such as social and solidarity economy, because we are involving any individual that would like to join these initiatives that aim to build solidarity, which would be a common objective. So in this sense, we have spoken about the economy of Francis, which is a youth movement that are diligently working towards launching an economy structure in 12 villages that combine a technical part of the economy with a gist. We have finance, humanities, we have inequality, CO2, vocation and benefit, dialogue, faith, and the economy. More than 2,000 economists, youth have been working in a network in order to launch that economy. And even last Saturday, there was an actual encounter at Assisi in order to speak about the strides made and the concrete projects that were created. So that's the point, to work with those youths that are promoting a new way of practicing the economy. So right now, the important part about the dicastery, it would be the launching of the technical laboratory, which was published in 2015. We're working towards the action platform. It's all online. You can go ahead and find it. But this platform includes 7 objectives of Lactosi, which combines the best of the economy, solidarity economy. It is our planet as a common home. Creation, and the care of the planet composed of creatures that come from the same creation. So we call for the being attentive to the poor, to the animals, to the earth, and focusing on spirituality with a 7-year project with 7 alliances, 7 stakeholders integrated into this platform. These alliances have been built from the local church. It's important to involve the local church. And then we cover the most extensive network of the world. Educational institutions, sanitary institutions, the economic sector, the civil society, the different orders, religious orders, and the families, 7 stakeholders, 7 families, 7 years to launch social and solidarity economy aligned to the values, to our values. And the actual proposal would be, it's the way we are working regarding the social and solidarity economy from our COVID Commission in 2020. Pope Francis, when the pandemic began, he did issue an order of organizing a commission that would be in charge of managing the pandemic. First and foremost was just to assess the events and how to approach that emergency. And now it's focusing on social and economic recovery and solidarity, particularly pertaining to vaccines. So that commission includes alliances. That's the structure. We cannot do anything without the others actors. It is difficult. First, we have to listen to our local church. During the course of the years, we have been listening the local church, listening to them to see what's happening on their ground. What are they experiencing? How can we take care of those individuals that have taken the brunt of the pandemic from an economic standpoint, healthcare standpoint? And the second group would be the social economic recovery group, which where we have included local economy, environmental impact, safety. And we have always worked in common, all with the alliances. We cannot do it alone. We have to do it with our allies in order to propose recovery. Communication, and fourth would be the relationship with states. Obviously, the Holy See has a relationship with other governments, as we know, especially, and we rely on crowdfunding. These are models of alliances and how different components are geared towards the same solidarity goal. Beyond the basis, we go towards the proposals, of recovery of the economy. So, and I'm open to any questions you might have. Thank you. Thank you. I think that it's important to remember that the challenges of society are large and they need the contribution of everybody. That's why it's a movement that includes individuals, families, governments, etc. Juan Manuel, what's your take on regarding this question? Likewise, there are 2 dimensions and we need to consider. One, you had answered, the importance of governments. I'll speak about political factor and what it has to do with the sector. Yes, it is the importance of government participation. I have to speak about as a member of the executive as opposed to my colleagues. So in the first dimension, we just really need to engage with other institutions and having a government where the discourse favors the type of the actual intervention of the social economy as it's important. Why? When we have a president who speaks about a transformation of a country prioritizing the poor, and when he speaks about a moral economy, that paves the road to have another type of dialogue with the rest of the government, with educational institutions, with the Department of Labor, the Department of the Economy, the Ministry of the Economy, so we can find those conduits that would have an impact, a favorable impact on the work in terms of social economy. So what we want to do at the INAE is that we want to demonstrate the social economy in the majority of cases. The objectives are met much better than with other types of alliances. That would be when our objective is the public sector. That's what we're doing. But there's a convergence point that has to do with the sector. The National Institute of Social Economy, parting from its law, that's what the law poses, that our mandate is to strengthen the social sector of the economy. And we do have we do have a stand there. There is a strong organized sector in Mexico, cooperatives in terms of savings and loans, and we do have a strong and steady system there. But there's also a very important sector that is not aware of what the social sector of the economy is. And in a country like Mexico, where we have informal economy and the percentages are rather high, but people are able to solve their entrepreneurial possibilities through social economy. They do it through cooperation, solidarity, and mutual savings and financing within them. They're creating their own social economy embryos or niches. So this is a sector that is not even aware of it. So we need a strategy that would be a local strategy. And I hope I can connect with the global idea, because that way, in order to, we have to strengthen the sector, not only the institution. So we have to create the node network that would be promoting social economy and solidarity economy. So it's an alliance between the universities, local government, and the sectors in the economy. So locally, we can find universities that would build capacities to improve social economy and entrepreneurship, along with organizations that are already carrying that out in the territory. So that way, each node or its niche can create their own strategies. Like in Comalcanco, Tabasco, they work on energies. In Mexico City, they work with care cooperatives. In other places, we're working towards primary production. Others have to do with platforms that we have mentioned before. But what I find as a source of hope is that they are interconnected. So what happened in Chihuahua can be replicated in Chiapas. And whatever that transpires in Mexico City can be replicated in Monterrey, or what happens in Monterrey can be replicated in Veracruz. So we can generate that once we have a network that's well communicated with similar codes, with processes that are similar, so everybody can share their knowledge. Fortunately, in the dialogues that we have held with other countries, as I mentioned before, I am confident that soon we'll have collaborations with other countries, particularly those in Central America. That way we can have a generation of knowledge parting from social economy, from local practices, and we can bring that knowledge over to platforms such as this one in communications, and that knowledge can be shared. And that way, entrepreneurial strategies and public policy knowledge can be distributed and disseminated in other states, and that way we can strengthen the sector. Thank you. Yes, it's of utmost importance to have this capability of action at a local level, but in many occasions, this is dependent on an availability of resources and knowledge from the government level in order to promote these initiatives. Antonella, from an international standpoint, how do you envision this?
Thank you, Beatrice. And don't hesitate to cut me again if needed. So I would like to start by saying that, of course, all these actors that you mentioned, government, groups, society, countries, citizens, bring a different set of skills, ambitions, capacity, and resources. So I think that for the benefit of the overall society, they should all be mobilized in their different spheres and again working together. So I will pick just one of the actors and what they can do. And this is obviously from our perspective, governments, and I will focus on their action at local level. But I would like just to remember that social economy represents an opportunity for all these groups, for all these actors, because of its transversal approach, the multiple impacts that it can have on the economic sphere, on the social sphere, on the democracy, on the participation at the level of the single individual, and on territories, of course, because what we see at international level more and more is the fact that regions and cities really owns more and more strategies that involve social economy actors. And this is what government should do. And I just want to provide you with the figures. At the OECD level, regional and local governments account for almost 58% of the total public investment, which means that they really have the capacity to support social economy development at that level. And along with this financial capacity, there is also an increased attention towards place-based policies, in which obviously social economy has its own role to play. So what could be done at the local level by governments? So governments, and we have, we have recently released a study on different regional development strategies for social economy in Europe, but we know that this exists also at the global level. So of course, it is important to capitalize on social economy potential for enhancing local and regional development. Very often the dynamics of social economy are closely intertwined with the dynamics and the push for local development. And obviously we see that when these strategies are co-created, and we have observed this in Spain, in France, these strategies are more likely to succeed. And also government at local level should really make efforts to better disseminate the good practices at the local level. And we have example of this, for instance, again, I will quote France, and there is a network of regional agencies which is very good at developing this kind of sharing knowledge. And of course, what government should do is to secure financial resources for the social economy, and they can tap in into different financial streams. For European countries, this can be, for instance, the European funds, but it can be national and public funds and private financial resources as well, cooperative bank, foundations, and so on and so forth. So I wanted just to underline that there is a big role that cities and regions can play to support social economy initiatives.
Muchas gracias. Sí, creo que esta última frase es clave.
Thank you that the last phrase was key. Paul Ladd, with that second question.
Thank you, Beatrice. I mean, it's such a huge question when you look at it. So I'm tempted just to chart one way through it, which does link back to SSE. And I would argue that many of the social fractures that we're seeing now, very stubborn inequalities, particularly in growing wealth inequalities, precarious work, and how that might get even worse with the advent of unequal technologies in the future. continuing unequal access to different types of services, and the environmental destruction that we're seeing at the same time. I think that the fundamental root of all of these challenges is how we have chosen to set up and govern our economic systems, especially in the last 40 years. And that has a macro side, and it also has a micro side at the firm level. And we've essentially encouraged a set of economic incentives that are very short term, not long term, locked into a financialized system. They're extractive. They focus on profit almost at any cost rather than social and environmental objectives. They're not resilient, as we've seen most recently with supply chain failures around the world. They're not sustainable because they haven't included or incorporated environmental costs. They're consumption-based and individualistic. And left to their own devices, these economic systems are not aligned with equality, inclusion, sustainability, or human rights. And this needs reversing. If we're going to reverse environmental destruction and social fractures and inequalities, then we need to return to some form of principled, and I think the term used earlier was some form of moral economy. Now, we have a number of different routes available for us to do this, and one of them strongly is the social and solidarity economy, which elevates social but often environmental objectives, introduces a stronger degree of democratic participation in how business activity is introduced, spreads the benefits more fairly, and doesn't get into this trap of only pursuing profit at all costs. So this is a perfect opportunity to make the argument for SSE in light of the crises and shocks and challenges that we're facing at the moment. I mean, beyond that, at the bigger level, it's about how we incentivize different types of behaviors, and governments have a number of different levers available to them. The problem is that, again, in the same period, governments have been decapacitated, underfunded, and have become less powerful, especially to larger transnational businesses. And that needs to be turned around, even to have the capacity to regulate for behaviors which are not compatible with sustainable development. The second thing I would say, and I've been arguing this for quite some time, is that we need a fundamental review at all levels, local, national, and international, of how we approach fiscal policy. We have an underfunding of activities which produce societal and environmental benefits. There are huge amounts of international tax avoidance and evasion, which are exacerbating wealth inequality. And governments are frankly starved of the resources that they need to provide universal social protection and universal access to health, to education, and to put in place the infrastructure that supports decent jobs. So these two things for me, which link very strongly to how SSE can shine a light in a new direction, how societies could and should be responding. One is turning away from this economic model, which is clearly not sustainable or inclusive. And the second one is reviewing once again the fundamental balance of power between the public and private sectors, and recapacitating the state to engage with economic activity once again.
Gracias. Sí, nos recuerda, ¿no? Que al
Thank
final,
you. So you're reminding us about the importance of good governing correctly for the people and not for the capital. You'll have a question, 1 minute. So without further, I'll give the floor to John Kim for his conclusion.
Thank you, Beatrice. Well, I think this pandemic gave all of us hard time and pain, but and it's still not over. But in retrospect, I think we have learned a number of important lessons from this experience. First, as many of speakers today mentioned, we live in the world of multifaceted inequality, economic, social, and sometimes political and spatial, etc. So that's one thing, one lesson. And as an economist, Mariana Mazzucato put it, the COVID-19 crisis is a chance to do the capitalism differently. Her emphasis, my understanding is that her emphasis is on more on the role of the public sector and the government, so it should be enlarged and reinforced. But I think in this context, SSE can prove its power to do the capitalism in a differently, and also to solve the problems of inequality. So I think we need to seize the moment, and I believe this kind of exchanges will be the another starting point for all of us. And I'd like to say thank you so much for having this great conference forum to Ines, especially Juan Manuel. I know all of you people there had worked really hard. So, and I thanks a lot for having me. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias. Marta Pedrajas, su contribución.
Marta Pedrajas, your contribution in one single minute. Well, in 1 minute, to underscore the message that I said from the start. In other words, social solidarity economy, definitely, it's something crucial so as to be able to generate the economy, keeping in mind the centrality of individuals, the planet, and creation, and to recover the fundamental values, from an anthropological perspective, a fundamental perspective from a human side and of the economy, and to place it on the principle of solidarity, human rights, well-being, and participation. Hence, this is a call from the Pope so as to be able to solve these issues with our souls. We've heard of many proposals, and I also wish to thank you all for having invited me to this wonderful event and to participate at this social economy forum, and also to convey the message from the Pope to keep in mind as a model Saint Francis, excuse me. I'm going to read 2 lines where it says, Francis warns, until which point are inseparable the concern of nature, justice towards the poor, commitment with society, and inner peace. So this is my wish as well to all of the SSE to share these values. They are universal, and of course, they help us to contribute towards a better construction towards the future. Thank you so much. Juan Manuel Martinez, your conclusion, please. If I can conclude, or rather for opening remarks, I do not believe that there is no other path than the SSE for the solution of the large problems of humanity. And I do not just say this from a proselytistic perspective. I believe because in the foundations, it has to do with what Marta was saying. In the foundations of any enterprise in the history of co-ops, we are human groups that are born to solve needs, not to aspire towards dreams or to sell in the markets like, the market economy does so. If we have organization based on the needs, then we are in a shared field, and human needs of the present and the future are every time more global. Thus, if we do not work in a network with these fundamental and ethical principles that constitute social economy, well, it will be very difficult to be able to solve global issues, or the other way around. What a grandiose advantage we have that having behind us a century-old history practicing moral economy and with ethical principles. Today, we have the great opportunity to work in a network for the resolution of the global issues that face all of us. Antonella Noia.
Yes, thank you, Beatrice. I would like to strengthen what was mentioned before by other panelists. So this is the right moment to keep increasing awareness on the added value of the social economy, and to also preach the non-converted, because there is a lot that the non-converted can learn from social economy, that is those virtuous practices which are permeated by values as solidarity, cooperation, social responsibility, which are an asset for all the society. So we are now in a very special moment in which we need everyone engagement committed to shift towards a more sustainable, inclusive, and fair society. And so it is important that social economy can really be considered as an actor that can play a role in this.
Muchas gracias. Paul Ladd.
Thank you very much. Paul Ladd, you have the floor.
Thank you. Very, very similar. I strongly feel that now is a brilliant opportunity in time in history to promote both the values, ideals, but also the practical manifestation of the social and solidarity economy. Now is the perfect time to offer it as a viable, well-researched solution to some of the challenges that we're facing. And I think I'd also just like to take the opportunity to reiterate something that Young Kim said at the beginning. The SSE sector is powerful in and of itself, but to actually change the world, we've got to talk to those that will never be a part of the SSE sector. You know, Unilever, Johnson & Johnson and others are never going to be a part of the SSE sector, but actually the SSE sector, in terms of how it approaches issues, has a lot to teach the world. And I think we need to reach out to other bits of the economy and press home hard the arguments on proper social and environmental citizenship.
Muy bien. Ahora
Thank you. Y ahora, and now we're going to go to the question and answer. We have a first question from Madam Diana Larcon. She is the General Coordinator of Advisors and International Matters for Mexico City. Madam, you have been recognized. Well, thank you. I will be very short, but first of all, I wish to thank the speakers for their interventions, and of course, building upon this latest comment from Paul, and of course, to add to the research agenda from other institutions. Well, one item which I believe is missing in the conversation with regards to the building of networks to promote social economy, in other words, the SSE, has to do with funding. It will be very difficult to be able to expect for the SSE to grow and prosper and become an important part, a strong part of our economies without amending the way in which we channel resources to fund for its growth. Hence, I believe that if we wish to open up the restrictions for the expansion of SSE, I believe that there is an element that we definitely need to think carefully about. A great answer. Anybody else wishes to answer or along these lines? Antonella?
Yeah, I can, of course, I can take this one. As I was mentioning before, this is something that indeed is, I think, an aspect that government should look at. And I would like to say that what I said a few days ago in another conference, that very often investment in social economy tend to be perceived as costs. But I think that once one see also what the contribution and the multiple impacts that social economy brings, this can be this investment should really, this cost should not be seen as cost, but really as investment with a return. Having said so, I think that there is also a need to provide tailored finance to social economy, and maybe also to open up a bit to private finance, knowing that it shouldn't come with too many strings and in terms of requirements, but that all the financial aspect of the social economy should again be co-constructed. I mean, money could come with additional elements that social economy needs.
Mientras otros panelistas piensan.
Well, other panel members will complement this answer. I invite those of you that are present and those of you online to ask a question. We do have a question. Does somebody wish to add to Antonella's answer? Yeah, to see a cost in social economy should be seen as, you know, something strategic. This is crucial. Okay, let's go on to the next question. Which best practices do you recommend to be able to achieve the participation of youth in social economy?
Kim or Juan Manuel, ¿quieres?
Kim, Juan Manuel, do you wish to answer? Or Marta? She was talking about the youth as well.
Bueno, enlazo también primero con la primera pregunta de Diana. Sí, bueno, es que está en la... sí, bueno, parte de nuestro trabajo en el instituto es generar...
Part of our work in the Institute is to create a financial ecosystem, a specific one for social economy. Of course, it's based on the great contribution of the loans and financing co-ops throughout the world. Of course, they do capture deposits, but the international scaffolding do not allow them to carry out deep investments. And that's where we find ourselves. In other words, to be able to convert these frameworks and financial mechanisms for this to be freed. And this, I liaise it with the generation of enterprises where youth should participate. And here I see a very important opportunity. First of all, Latin America has an opportunity this time, very importantly so, because these years, this period are a privileged window, because as never before, we have a large number of youth, a majority of youth. In other words, where youth compose or make up a self-sufficient component of society, which is extremely important. Hence, we need a strategy so that an entrepreneurial structure will accept all these young people. If there is a gain maximization criteria and economic profitability is above everything else, well, we see a marginalization of employments. And this, of course, has impact in our youth. When we rather have a criteria to generate enterprises to maintain employments, then we face other opportunities. And precisely, you know, this has been said much at this forum, being self-critical. You know, social economists are not good to communicate. And as a matter of fact, when we do communicate properly, when a social economy enterprise will find an identity because it's that company belongs to him, they will have the power, they will be able to decide on that company, and they will have revenue because their job is like the entrance ticket to that company. The reaction in youth is extremely good. And I believe that that's an important strategy. In other words, how to communicate that the formulae of the social economy have answers to the large questions that youth are asking themselves. And that's an important challenge in front of us. Well, thank you so much. Young Kim or Martha? Kim.
Sorry, my mic was muted. I just wanted to, you know, add to what just Juan Manuel said. I'll definitely echo everything he said, and I just wanted to point out to foster the participation of youth in this SSC sector is one of the key factor would be the education of SSC in the sort of school system. In Korea, over the last decade, the SSC actors worked really hard with the policymakers to have some courses on the SSC included in the regular school curricula, which ends up, being at least a part of part of the subject, like the economy class. The social and solidarity economy was taught, and a number of textbooks were developed as well. And those helped, more and more young students in school realize the potential and the importance of social and solidarity economy. Although we have a long way to go, I think that could be another starting point.
Muchas gracias. Pues yo creo que podríamos...
Thank you so much. I believe that we could continue talking about these topics for a long period of time, but I'm glad that we're going to close with the subject of youth because they are our future. So with this, we close this panel and we shall continue with the GCIF activities. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Nuestro país es reconocido por tener la segunda ciudad con más museos en el mundo. Uno de sus principales representantes es el Museo Nacional de Antropología, construido por Pedro Ramírez Vázquez, con 42 salas de exhibición, 11 de las cuales están dedicadas al mundo precolombino, 11 a las culturas indígenas de México y 2 más para exposiciones temporales.
En la primera sección del Bosque de Chapultepec encontraremos el Museo de Arte Moderno Rufino Tamayo. Dicho museo va a tener representaciones donde exhibirá la obra de este gran pintor oaxaqueño. Igualmente, reconoceremos la valiosa arquitectura realizada por Teodoro González de León y Abraham Sabludowski.
Levantado majestuoso sobre el Cerro del Chapulín se encuentra el único alcázar de México, el Castillo de Chapultepec, donde se cuenta la historia de Maximiliano de Habsburgo y Carlota, Porfirio Díaz, Benito Juárez y el heroico Colegio Militar.
Y sobre la avenida Paseo de la Reforma encontraremos el Museo de Arte Moderno. Dicho museo es construido hacia 1964 por el arquitecto Pedro Ramírez Vázquez. En él podemos encontrar obra de grandes artistas como Remedios Varo, Leonora Carrington, el doctor Gerardo Murillo, conocido como Dr. Ad, entre otros grandes artistas. Y por supuesto, si a ti te gusta conocer la obra de Frida Kahlo, conoceremos la obra de las 2 Fridas. Así que ven y disfruta de estos grandes museos. Te esperamos en la Ciudad de México.